Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is the monthly reading wrap-up for February of 2025. So in this video, I am going to be talking about the books that I read in February of 2025. I am not going to go in depth in this discussion. All of these books I have talked about in previous videos that I call Fresh Read Kills. Those are the videos where I really, get most of my thoughts out about the things that I have read. So if you want to know more about what I think about these books, you can go back into those videos. This is just meant to be a kind of wrap-up summary. So let's get started. I began the month by reading Sallust. So Sallust was a 1st century BCE Roman historian writing in Latin, and he wrote the Cataline's Conspiracy, the Jugurthine War, and Histories, which we only have fragments of. And I read the Oxford World Classics collection, and it's not that long. And I thought it was quite interesting. Sallust is somebody who, kind of failed at certain things in life. He was a politician, he was a military commander. None of those things really panned out for him. So he turns to history in order to try and gain his glory. And you can tell that he's kind of bitter about some of those earlier experiences that he had. Now, Cataline's Conspiracy deals with a man and his fellow conspirators, of course, named Cataline, who tried to basically take over the government and assassinate some government officials, especially Cicero. And he's caught and executed. And that's kind of the gist of it. I think one of the main points of the way that Sallust tells the story, for me, what stood out was the debate between Julius Caesar and Cato about whether or not Cataline should be executed. And then you have the Jugurthine War, which was a war that happened, before Sallust's time. There was a guy named Jugurtha who basically takes over the Numidian Empire, and the Romans go down into Numidia, which is part of northern Africa, to basically set things back in order, at least as they saw it. And Sallust introduces us to Marius and Sulla, two people who have become very important and have pretty bloody rivalry. He harps a lot on ideas in here about corruption in Roman politics. It's definitely something that he keeps, basically focusing on over and over and over again. And I talk about that more again in the video that I did about this. And I enjoyed it overall. It's a fairly quick read. It's a fairly easy read. So yeah, if you're interested in that sort of thing, I would recommend it. I also read this, Witches Among Us by Thorn Mooney. This is Understanding Contemporary Witchcraft and Wicca. So this is a book that is designed for non-witches, for non-Wiccans, and I am one of those. I am not a practicing witch or anything like that, but it's really made for those people who are outside the group to learn more about witchcraft and Wicca. So Thorn Mooney, she is a practicing Wiccan high priest, but she also is in academia, and she wanted something that she can hand people to basically say, yes, this is what witchcraft today is like, and Wicca today is like. Something that wouldn't be embarrassing, and that would be, academically sound. And I think she does a good job with this. And I read The Films of Stephen King, From Carrie to Secret Window. This is a collection of academic essays that look at various Stephen King films. And all through different lenses. Sometimes it's through the lens of, it might be race, it could be gender, it could be class, it could be a whole number of different things, feminism. And some of these were really good. I liked quite a few of the essays. There were a few that I thought the writer was overreaching, where they were seeing, class where it really wasn't, or they were seeing especially race where I don't think it was actually there. So there's definitely times where you can see people manipulating evidence to try and have it fit whatever their academic expertise is. But, there's a few in here that I didn't find convincing, but most of them I actually enjoyed quite a bit. This is made by Palgrave Macmillan, which unfortunately these books can be very expensive. Some years ago, quite a few, I think it was like probably 4 years ago at least, they had an excellent sale. It was like a Black Friday sale where it was like all their books were $5. I've never seen that sale again from them, but I was able to pick up a whole pile of them, and this was one of them, so really glad I got it. I also read this, The Lost History of Liberalism, From Ancient Rome to the 21st Century by Helena Rosenblatt. I read this as part of a group read in the Historithon group, and this is looking at the concept of liberalism, especially in the late 18th and throughout the 19th century in Europe. And she really stresses how hard it is to pin down what liberalism actually meant. It meant different things at different times to different people. Sometimes it's an adjective, sometimes it's a noun. Sometimes it means that the government stays out of everything. Sometimes it means the government actually assists. There's times over and over again, too, where people would promise liberal policies. Then once they get into power, they forget that, and they go right over to conservatism once they have their power. So we saw those sorts of things over and over again. And she also is trying to, I guess, rehabilitate the roles that France and Germany played in developing liberalism, roles that have been minimized a lot historically over the past century or so. And I thought she did a pretty good job with this. Again, it's really kind of the history of a word or a concept in that century. But I thought it was definitely easy to follow. It was readable. And I was able to follow her logic along the way. So I did like it, and I would recommend it. And I finished off the month with Nikos Kazantzakis, I don't know if I'm saying that right still, The Last Temptation of Christ, a very controversial book that was made into a very controversial movie back in the 1980s, a movie that I like quite a bit. And I overall liked this book. We see a Jesus who is, yes, he is divine, but he is not perfect. He is in many ways very, very human. And he deals with temptation, obviously. He deals with, self-doubt. And there are some bold choices made in here that I can understand why they rub people the wrong way. Although I personally wasn't bothered by them because I'm not a Christian, so that's probably a big aspect. But making Jesus essentially a carpenter who makes crosses, that's a pretty bold move. Making Jesus the Judas almost like the hero of the book, that's a bold move as well. Making Jesus, in love with Mary Magdalene, that's a bold move. So there's a lot of really big moves in here, but I think they actually worked really well narratively. I thought that they brought out the human side in a very good way. I loved really the first act, the first third. The middle, I felt like my interest was wavering a little bit. There wasn't a lot going on. And then we get to the third act, and I really liked that. I thought there was some really interesting dialogue, really interesting narrative choices. I had said in my video where I talk about more about my feelings of this, there were some racial prejudices that found their way into this book that just didn't need to be there. And that was something of a blemish for me as I was reading through it. But overall, I still think that there are a lot of strengths to this. So, those are what I read for February 2025. So I got my stack here. I got Witches Among Us, Sallust, The Last Temptation of Christ, The Lost History of Liberalism, and the films of Stephen King. If you're any of these, love to hear your thoughts, and as always, thank you, booktube.